All right, get ready, because today we're diving into a system that I have to admit is both fascinating and a little intimidating. We're talking about the German healthcare system, specifically how they determine who needs long-term care and the level of support they receive.
Right.
I mean, get this, they even factor in cognitive and psychological needs, not just physical limitations. I'm already intrigued.
It's pretty thorough, but it is designed to ensure that everyone gets the care they need, which I think is admirable.
I can see that. So where do we even begin to untangle something this complex?
Well, a key player in all of this is the MDK, or Medizinischer Dienst der Krankenversicherung, to use its full name.
MDK, got it. So is that like their version of, I don't know, a healthcare watchdog?
Yeah, I think that's a fair comparison. They're responsible for quality control in care facilities, but they also play a critical role in assessing individual care needs and providing guidance to patients and their families.
Okay, so they're not just checking if the facilities are up to par. They're actually involved in evaluating each person's situation. And from what I've read, the documentation involved is incredibly important.
Absolutely. You can think of the documentation as like a detailed roadmap of a person's needs. It's the foundation for everything that follows. And the MDK takes this documentation very, very seriously.
Like, how seriously are we talking? What happens if a facility's documentation isn't up to snuff?
Well, the consequences can be pretty significant. They have the authority to issue improvement notices, impose fines, and in extreme cases, even revoke a facility's license.
Wow, that's intense. So I can definitely see why accurate documentation is so crucial for both patients and care providers.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say someone needs long-term care in Germany. What's the process like?
Well, it typically starts with an assessment by, you guessed it, the MDK.
The MDK. Makes sense.
And to make this assessment, they use what's called the new assessment, or NBA for short.
NBA. Got it. So walk me through this NBA. What's involved?
Okay, so the NBA is broken down into 6 modules, each one focusing on a different aspect of a person's well-being and their ability to function independently.
6 modules? That sounds pretty extensive.
It is, but it helps paint a complete picture of the individual's needs.
I'm listening. Tell me more.
All right, so Module 1 focuses on mobility. Things like a person's ability to move around their home, get in and out of bed, or climb stairs.
That makes sense. Mobility is a fundamental part of daily life.
Exactly. And then we move on to Module 2, which delves into cognitive and communicative abilities, evaluating things like orientation, comprehension, and memory.
So we're already getting more nuanced than just physical assessments.
Right.
I like it.
Module 3 focuses on behavioral and psychological issues.
Okay, like what?
Things like nighttime restlessness, anxieties, or aggression.
So they're really trying to get a complete picture of the person, not just their physical limitations.
Exactly, that's the goal.
This is fascinating.
Module 4 focuses on self-care. Things like bathing, dressing, using the toilet, and managing their own nutrition.
So basic self-sufficiency.
Right. And this module actually carries the heaviest weight in the overall assessment, accounting for 40% of the total score.
Wow. 40%, that's a big chunk.
It is, but it makes sense, right? Self-sufficiency is a major factor in determining the level of care needed.
I can definitely see that.
Okay, moving on to Module 5. This one assesses a person's ability to manage their medical and therapeutic needs. Can they handle things like taking their medication, changing bandages, or attending doctor's appointments without assistance?
So it's not just about physical ability. It's about the capacity to manage one's own health. This is really interesting.
And finally, we have Module 6, which looks at shaping daily life and social contacts.
Okay, so things like hobbies and social activities.
Yeah, things like that. It's about understanding their ability to live a fulfilling life, not just meet their basic needs.
I like that. It's a holistic perspective. So we've got these 6 modules, each looking at a different facet of a person's life and abilities. But how do these modules actually translate into a specific care level being assigned?
It's all about the points. Within each module, the assessor assigns points based on the individual's level of independence, and each module has a different weighting, reflecting its impact on a person's overall independence.
So there's actual math involved. It's not just a simple checklist.
It's very methodical, designed to ensure a fair and individualized assessment.
I see.
Then, they add up the points from all 6 modules, and that determines what's called the Pflegegrad, which is essentially their care level.
Pflegegrad. Okay, I'm trying to keep up with all these German terms.
No worries, it's exact.
So based on their Pflegegrad, individuals are assigned to a specific level of care.
Exactly.
That makes sense. It's a sliding scale of needs.
Right.
based on the results of those 6 modules. Man, this is
It
complex.
is complex, but it's designed to be comprehensive and equitable because care needs aren't one size fits all.
And what I find most interesting about the German approach is the emphasis on cognitive and psychological needs.
Mm.
It's not just about physical limitations.
You're absolutely right. That's one of the things that makes their system so unique.
It's a much more holistic view of what constitutes needing care.
I agree.
For example, someone with dementia might be physically capable but struggle immensely with cognitive tasks and communication. Their need for support goes beyond what you can see on the surface.
That's a great example. And the German system, with its emphasis on those cognitive and psychological factors, does a great job of addressing that.
This has been so insightful. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of this system.
We have covered a lot, but there's still so much more to explore.
Well, I'm definitely ready to dive deeper. So let's take a break here. And when we come back, we'll continue our exploration of the German long-term care system. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the German long-term care system.
Last time we left off talking about how important that documentation is to getting the right care level assigned. But what happens if someone disagrees with the MDK's assessment? Is there a way to challenge their decision?
That's a great question. And it really highlights another layer of this system's commitment to fairness. So if someone feels the MDK's assessment doesn't accurately reflect their needs or the needs of their loved one, they have the right to appeal.
Okay, that's good to know. So it's not just a one-and-done situation. There's room for, recourse. So tell me more. How does this appeal process work?
Well, the first step is to file what's called a Widerspruch.
A Widerspruch.
Yeah, basically a formal objection to the MDK's decision.
Okay.
Think of it as saying, hold on, MDK, let's take another look at this.
Widerspruch. I'm going to try and remember that one. It sounds pretty official.
Yeah.
So where do you even file this Widerspruch?
It needs to be submitted to the individual's insurance provider. Again, remember, we're talking about the public healthcare system here. And here's the catch. It has to be done within 4 weeks of receiving the MDK's assessment.
4 weeks? That doesn't seem like a lot of time to gather all the necessary information and build your case.
You're right. It is a tight time frame. That's why it's so important to be proactive and organized with your documentation from the very beginning. You want to be prepared to act quickly if you need to appeal.
This is where those meticulous records we talked about earlier become even more crucial, right? It's almost like building a legal case, but for your care needs.
Exactly. You need to provide strong evidence to support your claim that the assigned care level is incorrect.
Okay.
This might include additional documentation, medical reports, statements from doctors or therapists, even testimonials from family members or caregivers who can attest to the individual's daily challenges.
So it's about presenting a comprehensive and compelling argument to the insurance provider. So what happens next? Do they automatically grant a higher care level if you file a Widerspruch?
Not quite. The insurance provider will carefully review the Widerspruch and all the supporting documents. They might even conduct their own investigation, consulting with medical professionals or requesting additional assessments to clarify any uncertainties.
Okay, so they don't just rubber stamp these appeals. They really dig into the details.
Absolutely. The goal is to reach a fair and accurate decision. And based on their review, the insurance provider will either uphold the original care level or assign a new one.
Okay, that makes sense. But what happens if, after going through this whole process, the individual still disagrees with the decision? Is that the end of the line?
Not necessarily. The German system actually offers another layer of appeal, demonstrating just how seriously they take individual rights. So if the insurance provider's decision remains unsatisfactory, the individual can take their case to a social court, known as the Sozialgericht.
Wow, so it can actually end up in a full-blown legal battle. I didn't realize it could go that far.
It can. Though it's important to note that most cases are resolved before reaching the court level. The vast majority are settled during that initial Widerspruch phase.
Right.
But it's good to know that option is there. The system has safeguards in place to ensure a thorough and fair process.
It's like a safety net, ensuring that people's voices are heard and their needs are taken seriously. This whole appeals process really emphasizes the importance of advocating for yourself or for your loved ones when navigating the care system.
I couldn't agree more. Knowledge is power, as they say. The more you understand the system, the better equipped you are to navigate it effectively and ensure the best possible outcome.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've covered the MGK, the MBA, those 6 modules, the care levels, and even the appeals process. It's a lot to take in. But I'm starting to get a real sense of how comprehensive this German long-term care system is. It's like they've thought of everything.
They've certainly made a concerted effort to create a system that's both thorough and equitable. And what's even more interesting is that this system, known as Pflegeversicherung, is a relatively recent development. It was only introduced in 1995.
Wait, really? That recently? I had no idea. What did people do before 1995 if they needed long-term care?
It was a patchwork of solutions, often relying heavily on family support, personal savings, and limited social welfare programs.
I can only imagine. It sounds like a system rife with uncertainty and potential hardship for those in need.
It was. The introduction of Pflegeversicherung marked a major shift in Germany's approach to long-term care. It created a more structured and sustainable system, ensuring that everyone who contributed had access to care when they needed it.
It sounds like Germany was ahead of the curve in recognizing the growing need for comprehensive long-term care solutions. I'm curious, has the system changed much since 1995?
It has. Since its inception, Pflegeversicherung has undergone several revisions and expansions, all aimed at strengthening the system and adapting to evolving needs.
So they're constantly tweaking and improving it.
Exactly. They even have a specific term for these updates, Pflegestärkungsgesetze, which translates to laws to strengthen long-term care.
Pflegestärkungsgesetz. Okay, that one might take a few more tries to remember. But it's fascinating to see how the system is actively evolving and responding to the changing needs of society.
Exactly. They've recognized that as the population ages and care needs become more diverse and complex, the system must adapt to ensure it remains effective and sustainable.
Speaking of evolving needs, I've been thinking about the impact of technology on long-term care. It seems like there's so much potential there, but also a lot of challenges.
You're spot on. Technology has the potential to revolutionize the way we deliver and experience care. Think about things like telehealth, where individuals can consult with doctors and specialists remotely, reducing the need for travel and in-person appointments.
Oh yeah, that's especially helpful for people with mobility issues.
Yep.
Or those living in rural areas with limited access to specialized care.
Exactly. And then there are remote monitoring devices, which can track vital signs, detect falls, even monitor medication adherence.
Wow.
Imagine the peace of mind that could provide for both care recipients and their families.
I can see how technology could play a huge role in alleviating caregiver stress and burnout. You know, something we talked about earlier, families know their loved ones are being monitored and supported. It could lighten their load considerably.
You're absolutely right. And we're only scratching the surface here. We're seeing the emergence of robots designed to assist with care tasks. From medication reminders to companionship and social interaction, it's a rapidly evolving field.
Wow, robots. It's exciting to think about all the possibilities, but I also wonder about the potential downsides. What about privacy concerns? And how do you ensure that technology complements human care rather than replacing it altogether?
Those are all valid concerns. Integrating technology into a system as complex as Germany's long-term care system isn't without its challenges. Data privacy is paramount, and there needs to be careful consideration of ethical implications and potential biases embedded in algorithms.
Yeah, you're right. Technology should empower individuals and enhance care, not create new barriers or exacerbate existing inequalities. And we have to remember the human element of care, the warmth of human touch, empathy, genuine connection. Those can't be replicated by a machine.
I completely agree. The goal is to find the right balance, using technology as a tool to support and enhance human care, not replace it entirely. It's about creating a more sustainable and humane care ecosystem for everyone involved.
This conversation has raised so many important questions about the future of care. As technology advances and care needs evolve, how will the German system continue to adapt? Will the NBA, for example, need to be revised to account for new technological tools and interventions?
That's a crucial question policymakers and healthcare professionals are grappling with right now. It's a constant process of evaluation and adjustment. The good news is that the German long-term care system has a history of being dynamic and responsive to change.
Well, that's encouraging. To see a system that's not afraid to embrace innovation, while also remaining grounded in those fundamental values of individual dignity and social solidarity.
It's a fascinating case study in how a society can come together to address one of the most fundamental human needs, the need for care and support when we're most vulnerable.
Beautifully put. It seems like we've covered a lot of ground today, from those nitty-gritty details of assessments and documentation to the broader philosophical questions surrounding the role of technology and the future of care. I'm curious, what stands out to you as the most crucial takeaway for our listeners?
For me, it's the recognition that care needs are complex and individualized, And a truly effective system needs to reflect that complexity. The German model, with its emphasis on those thorough assessments, meticulous documentation, and a holistic approach encompassing both physical and cognitive needs, offers valuable lessons for other countries grappling with the challenges of an aging population and evolving care needs. What about you? What resonated most with you?
Hmm. What resonated most with me? I think you hit the nail on the head. It's the German system's commitment to fairness and thoroughness. It's not perfect, no system is, but they've created a structure that seems to genuinely prioritize the well-being and dignity of individuals, both those receiving care and those providing it.
I agree. It's a system that prioritizes both quality of care and individual dignity. And as we've discussed, it's a system that's constantly evolving. To meet the challenges of an aging population and a rapidly changing world, there's always room for improvement and adaptation.
This has been such a thought-provoking conversation, but I feel like we could keep going for hours. There's so much more to uncover and explore. But for now, dear listeners, we'll have to pause our deep dive here.
Don't worry, though, we'll be back for part 3, where we'll tackle some of the listener questions we've received, exploring topics like funding and caregiver support. Plus, we'll share some resources for those who want to delve even deeper into this fascinating subject. Stay tuned.
All right, welcome back to our final part of our deep dive into the German long-term care system.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey exploring all the ins and outs of this system, from those detailed assessments to the appeals process, and even looking ahead at the role of technology.
It really has. And, speaking of things to consider, we've received some really great questions from our listeners, particularly about the financial side of things and the support that's available for caregivers.
Yeah, those are crucial aspects of any long-term care system. So let's jump right in.
Okay, the first question comes from Sarah in California, and it's one I know a lot of people are probably wondering about. She asks, who actually foots the bill for all this care in Germany? She says, it sounds pretty comprehensive, so I imagine it must be expensive.
That's a great question, Sarah, and it gets to the heart of how Germany funds its long-term care system. Remember earlier we talked about Pflegeversicherung, the long-term care insurance program.
Right, it's kind of like their version of Medicare, but specifically for long-term care needs. So I'm guessing it plays a major role in covering the costs.
You guessed it. Everyone who contributes to the public health insurance system also pays into Pflegeversicherung. It's a mandatory contribution, similar to how most countries handle public health insurance.
So it's like a shared responsibility.
Exactly. Everyone contributes to a pool of funds that can then be used to support those in need.
That makes sense. It's like a safety net woven from everyone's contributions. But what about people who maybe can't afford those contributions?
Right.
Or those who haven't paid in long enough to qualify? Are they just left to fend for themselves?
No, not at all. That's where the German system's commitment to social solidarity really shines through. They have mechanisms in place to ensure that everyone has access to the care they need, regardless of their financial situation.
Okay, good.
So if someone can't afford their contributions, there are subsidies and financial assistance programs available.
That's reassuring to hear. It's a good reminder that healthcare is a human right, not a privilege reserved for the wealthy. Okay, let's move on to our next question. This one comes from Mark in New York. He writes, I'm curious about how the German system addresses the issue of caregiver burnout. He says, providing long-term care can be incredibly demanding, both physically and emotionally. And I imagine it takes a toll on those providing the care.
You're absolutely right, Mark. Caregiver burnout is a serious concern, and it's one that Germany takes very seriously. So they've incorporated several strategies into their system to help mitigate burnout and support caregivers.
Okay, I'm really interested to hear about this. What kind of support is available for caregivers in Germany?
Well, one key element is respite care, which gives family caregivers a much-needed break from their responsibilities, knowing that their loved one is being cared for by trained professionals.
That sounds incredibly valuable. I can imagine how exhausting and isolating caregiving can be. So having that opportunity to, step back and recharge must be a lifesaver.
Exactly. And there's flexibility in how respite care is delivered. From in-home support to temporary stays in care facilities, it really depends on the needs of both the caregiver and the care recipient.
So it's a personalized approach. What about the financial burden of caregiving? Often caregivers have to reduce their work hours or even quit their jobs altogether to provide care.
Yeah.
Is there any support for that in Germany?
Absolutely. The German system recognizes the economic sacrifices caregivers often make and offers financial benefits and subsidies to help alleviate that burden.
Wow, that's fantastic. It makes such a difference when the system acknowledges and addresses those real-life challenges faced by caregivers. It's not just about the person receiving care, it's about supporting that whole care ecosystem.
Exactly. And beyond the financial support, Germany also provides counseling services and support groups specifically for caregivers. These resources can help them cope with the emotional and psychological strain that often comes with providing long-term care.
It's really like they've thought of everything. It's a holistic approach to care,
It is.
supporting both those receiving it and those giving it. And we can't forget the potential role of technology in all of this. As we discussed earlier, advancements in telehealth, remote monitoring, even robotics, all of that could significantly lighten the load for caregivers, giving them more time to focus on those more human aspects of care.
Absolutely.
It's exciting to think about how technology can be harnessed to create a more sustainable and supportive care ecosystem, one that benefits everyone involved. This whole deep dive has really opened my eyes to a whole new way of thinking about care. And honestly, it's inspiring.
I feel the same way. The German long-term care system certainly has its complexities, but it also demonstrates a deep commitment to human dignity, social responsibility, and a willingness to adapt and evolve. It offers a model that other countries, including our own, can learn from as we face the growing challenges of an aging population and increasingly complex care needs.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, folks, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the German long-term care system. It's been a fascinating journey, filled with insights and, I think, a lot of thought-provoking discussions. And as always, we encourage you to continue exploring this topic on your own. We'll be sharing additional resources in the show notes, including links to articles, websites, and organizations that can provide even more in-depth information.
And if you have any further questions or insights you'd like to share, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're always eager to learn and grow together.
That's it for this episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep diving deep, keep asking questions, and never stop exploring.